letting go of every single dream. I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things, be my life and bread. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already said. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
They were giving me the sign back there that wasn't working. My apologies. I started to say difficult would be a word that is underestimated today as we gather here today and we meet with the family and the freshness of loss of life and unexpectedly. I don't want to pretend to have all the words, and I certainly didn't know Earl as well as all of you, or at least very many of you. And yet, by knowing Allison, that's my primary way, and having met him 2 or 3 times here as he came along with her, that I got a glimpse but nothing like what she shared with me the other night. And today what we're attempting to do as best we can is to go ahead in the midst of the loss of a life is to honor that life and respect it. I didn't wear a suit and tie today out of that very same respect. And I was very comforted to see that neither did Earl have a suit and tie on today either. Something we had in common that is just not necessarily who we are. For those of you that show your respect in that regard, I understand. I want you to know I was raised better, and my mom would be deeply embarrassed that I'm standing here this way. But because of Allison, I am proudly standing here as I am, just jeans and cowboy boots and a shirt. I'm a nobody that is a somebody only because of one man named Jesus, and then countless people that have crossed my path. And today, as we try to, both in faith as well as in guts and determination, to both mourn but also to celebrate. And it's that grittiness that Earl and Allison have shown over the years, that you put your elbows out and you do what needs to be done. But it's not to be ordered. It's not to be commanded. It's rather instead to be endeared. And the world itself will shorten his life up to that dash that we've all heard about or seen on the tombstones. But you are the ones that will make it be more than a dash. You're the ones that will make it a lifetime. The mom, sister, the family in that regard, as well as the family he married into, you are the ones that have given him life in many ways, and it's you that will go ahead and continue to let him live. The devil I believe in, and it's times like this that makes me believe. I've come to believe in God because I want to believe there's something certainly way beyond this, and because of the historical facts of what I believe that Jesus did, not just because of what some would consider a book of fairy tales, but rather a book that contains death and contains tears and contains sorrow and doesn't in any way explain everything the way I'd like it explained. And if it comes to explanations, I am far out of them. And as I've shared with Allison, I just hurt with her. And but today we're here to do that with the family and to cry with them. And if there's ever a time to cry, this is it. There's nothing to be embarrassed about in that regard. We're here to try to sort through the just unbelievable and decide what we're going to do with what we believe. And my personal opinion is that we couldn't keep Earl alive physically, but there's nothing that keeps us from keeping alive in our hearts. And my challenge to each of you would be is that you pick up something from his life and you make determined steps to say, from this point on, for as long as I live, people will know about Earl because I'm going to tell them about him. And I'm going to live differently because of him. And I'm going to be bold in my love as he was. And so I know most of us don't look for a funeral to attend very often. In fact, we would choose to avoid them like the plague, right? Because they're just not comfortable. And so you're not here because of comfort or because you enjoy going. You're here because there was a life that was so special you couldn't sidestep this. And I know that there are probably several hundred people that because of time and distance weren't allowed to come that would have gladly been here. And so we welcome them and their spirit and their prayers. But today we're going to do the best we can to take this man and to remember back of things that happened, things that, as the sign said, maybe it was out there, that's the one over here that says that life is made up of moments, the ones that take your breath away. And so that's what we're going to do, is to look back at Earl's life. I'm just going to try to be the servant to this family and to just guide you through it. But I'm thankful that I've got 3 guys at least that are going to come up here after my prayer and after another song. And I guess we'll do the song after the end of them. But they're going to come up and share with you because 3 different perspectives on his life. And I just would share with you 2 passages that to help you feel possibly comfort, not to shove God down anybody. But one I find in Ecclesiastes that's intriguing. And it simply says this: I've seen something else under the sun. And now this is written by the wisest man that ever lived. The race is not always to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned. But time and chance happen to them all. And then he says, moreover, no man knows when his hour will come. We just don't know. The other one is similar to that, only it deals with death. And it says in Isaiah 57 that the righteous perish, and no one ponders it in his heart. In other words, why? We do ponder it, but we aren't able to come to grips necessarily. And Isaiah goes ahead and writes on behalf of the Lord and said, devout men are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those that walk upright enter into peace, and they find rest, even as they lie in death. If you will, let's pray. Jesus, you were the one that on the eve of your death, you knew what was coming, and your disciples just didn't have a grasp of it. You're the one that said, don't let your hearts be troubled, but trust in God and trust in you. Today, God, we reach out, and even in anger, even in uncertainty and fear and confusion, I'm thankful you're a big enough God. You can handle our questions and our tears and our anger. And I just pray for your comfort. For those that want, I pray today to be nothing more than a stepping stool. And God, as I've prayed before, I pray again that they could step up onto my back and into your lap. I pray for these that are going to come and share memories of Earl, that they would bring comfort and insight to his life, Lord, and maybe strike the match of our own memories as we look back and think about countless ways that he was just noble in the way that he handled things, that he was fun to be with. And he certainly had a depth of love that's just hard to even grasp. So God, I pray that we could be their servants today, and that those that want could step up into your lap and find it big and your arms strong. In the midst of not being able to grasp on my own, Lord, the why and the when and all, God, I just pray that you've got a rhyme and a reason and a purpose. And maybe it was to spare this man from suffering some evil that wouldn't have been bearable to him or his soul. But God, nonetheless, I ask that your arms would wrap around these that are here. You'd give us clarity of thought, and you would shout back the evil one, that for a moment here we could gather our thoughts, and that we could begin to truly absorb the life that was lived. And might those memories never fade. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. So at this time, I think we have 3 different speakers that are going to come up and share. It's kind of like that, to tell the truth. I didn't get your name, so my apologies there, but Allison will call you out if she needs to.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Skip, and I'm going to try not to cry, so I'll do my best today. Here to celebrate Earl's life. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption. I saw it kind of late in life. And one of my favorite quotes from that movie is, "Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies." Well, I had a chance to meet Earl in a business setting in, I think, 2008. I was trying to figure out the year that I met Earl, and I really can't remember what I had for breakfast, so going back and calculating those years has been somewhat challenging. So I think it was 2008, but don't hold me to that. But we worked together, and Earl just had one of those personalities that I was just drawn to. He had that dry sense of humor, and he always had a great joke, and he always had a way to make me laugh when I really needed to laugh. So I really kind of was drawn to Earl, and he was a special guy. And so we worked together for a couple years, and then over time, we stayed in touch. And I know Earl went through that super season where he got really healthy. And I was talking to him during those times, and he was losing weight, and he was pumping iron, and he and I met for lunch one day, and this picture of him on this card was the guy that showed up for lunch. And I was like, holy cow, his arms were huge. And I was a little bit intimidated, but it was awesome to see Earl's hard work, and he was getting so big. And so I had to challenge him. I had to get a little one-up, and I said, hey, man, why don't you and I run a half marathon together? Because I'm a thinner guy, and I thought I'd have an advantage, and he gets my humor. And so Earl said yes, and I was like, holy cow, we got to start training. So Earl and I began training during the week, and then every Saturday we would meet for our long runs, and we would usually meet at the Silver Comet Trail, and we'd meet really early, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and went from running 2 miles to 4 miles to 10 miles, and then ultimately got to running like 12 miles. And during those times, we would just have some of the great conversations about life, politics. Earl loved to talk to me about politics. And we didn't always agree. We sometimes did, but he always had a great way of positioning what he was thinking about. And I really just appreciated who he was as a man and really how God had wired him. And we did run the race, and we both finished, but I did beat him, just for the record. But one of the pictures over here, I think Earl's wearing his half marathon shirt, so it was a great time. And the other story I'll tell you is if Earl were here, he's still mad at me. There's few in this room, but we went on a hiking trip. And if anybody's ever hiked in the North Georgia mountains, we went to the Cohutta Mountain Range, a very remote area. And I was the person that was in charge of putting together the actual hike. And what I didn't look at was the topo map. And I don't know if you guys know what the topo map is, but it basically shows, a few of you. And we finished that race. It was 2 days. It was 2 nights, 2 days. And Earl called that hiking trip the Baton Death March. Brent's back there, and Brent will remember. Earl didn't speak to me for probably a week after that hike, but it was a great time, and we had a super time. And then the most important story that I wanted to share and just kind of bring this full circle about the quote from Shawshank Redemption, that no good thing ever dies, is I had a chance over the years to invite Earl to different events. And one event that he came to was up in the North Georgia mountains, and it was a room full of probably 30 or 40 guys, and we were all in different places spiritually, but we were talking about kind of our faith journey. And it was kind of like on day 2, and Earl came and found me, and he said, Skip, he said, I am in this place where everybody in this room is talking about how they can become better men and be better fathers, and I don't even know who Jesus and who God is, and I want to make that decision. And so I went and grabbed a couple of the guys, and we knelt with Earl, and at that moment, I think it was 2008, Earl accepted Jesus. We don't know if he accepted or rededicated, but we know that he made a decision in that moment. And I wanted to share that quote because nothing good dies. Earl is more alive today than he ever has been. And we can cling to that truth. We also know it's difficult because it's never easy. And God does promise that he comforts those that mourn. And so we should hang on to those truths that God will comfort us during that time. And I think that's all that I wanted to share. So I will certainly miss Earl. He actually came to some events about a month ago. And one of the things that I loved about Earl is he had a way of just being himself. So we would have deep spiritual conversations, and if Earl didn't believe, he would say he didn't believe that particular thing, but it would just be a place where he would do it in a way, and it would just almost give permission for us to have deep, deep conversations about what was really going on. And the important thing is he made the most important decision to follow his Savior, and that's the most important thing. But we had some great conversations because Earl just stepped out and was willing to be transparent. So I know we're all going to miss him, and thank you for the opportunity. Allison, I'm going to be continuing to pray for you and your family, and thank you for the opportunity. God bless. Oh, I have a picture that Allison gave me from our recent event, and the guy in the yellow jacket is Earl. Right in the middle of the photo was a retreat we did, and he is smiling from ear to ear. I think his photo's over here, so thank you, Allison.
I'm going to keep this fairly short, not because it deserves brevity, but that's about all I could probably handle. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Brostoff, and I was a close friend with Earl. I've known him since I was 13 years old, and both lived in Winston-Salem at the time, and we lost touch for many years. and happened that he moved here with his family, and it happened to be only 10 minutes away from where I lived. So I'm not sure how that worked out, but I'm glad it did. It was extremely good news, and I was looking forward to reconnecting with an old friend. When I saw Earl again for those years, after all those years, it was quickly apparent that his skinny frame and a head full of curly hair had gone. And in all fairness, I had gained a few pounds and lost my full head of hair as well. But in every other way, Earl hadn't changed a bit. He was still the same kind-hearted, laid-back guy that was my best friend as a kid. I can't remember us ever having an argument, but if we did, I'm sure it was my fault. He was not the confrontational type, and his easygoing nature didn't lend itself to getting into those types of situations. Each of us were affected by Earl in different ways, but I'm sure they were all positive. His list of good qualities is a long one, so I will give an edited version by saying that he was a generous, loving, honest, and genuinely caring person who possessed a brilliantly dry sense of humor and a humble smile that he shared with us often. He was a great friend whose loyalty was never in question. And if I ever needed help or someone to talk to, he was there. Above all else, Earl was a family man, through and through. He and I spoke often about family, and he loved his dearly. There was never any question or any doubt that Allison and their kids were the center of his life. Earl left us all much too soon. And he will be incredibly missed by his friends and family. But all of us were at least lucky enough to have him in our lives for the time he was here. He will always live in our in our thoughts and in our hearts. And we can honor his memory by trying to take what each of us gained from knowing him and using it in some way to better ourselves. I know I will.
My name is Kevin. I'm from Earl's Gamer Friends, and I think that seeing at least the three of us should give three separate views of Earl, and that really shows how diverse he really was as a person, as a man. I met him in the late 90s. He had moved to Rhode Island after graduating from Thoreau. He took his dream job running the New England region for a gaming company, and I had a lot of time on my hands. I got to travel with him incessantly for about 2 years, all around New England, around the country, and even a little bit internationally, all playing a game. And in that time, he introduced me to his friends that he had met here, there, and everywhere. And in that time, those people became some of my best friends, our best friends, and you realize, as Allison called me, to call all of them, that Earl was the center that spoke, that it was his influence that kept all those people together. And I don't know a couple of you, some of his newer friends, because I'm still up there and I'm not down here, but I could tell you that if I met you in a store or somewhere else, we'd bump into each other, might be polite and keep walking, but had Earl introduced us, we'd have been the best of friends. Because that's what he brought to the world, that's what he brought to people, he was a bridge maker, a community builder. When he came into a room of 100 gamers, you might know 30 of them, but by the end, Earl was best friends with 50 of them. And it was that humble yet open attitude that attracted everyone to him. It's not to say that he wasn't funny, that his jokes weren't horrible at times, that they made you cringe when you knew you had just said something that opened the door for him. But as bad or as good as that joke was going to be, you could give it back to him, and he'd laugh just as hard. And as I called my friends, and our friends, I called them all back the next day and said, tell me a story. Tell me something funny, because I don't want to deal with the bad. And everybody had 10 of them. And I could stand here for an hour and repeat them, but I won't. I can't. Most of them I don't think you'd get. I don't think it's appropriate for a church. But that was Earl. And, you know, when Earl met Allison, you know, he started talking about her to me and how excited he was. And it was a different side of him that I didn't know he had. And I think that was very exciting for me, exciting for him. It was good to see him grow like that. He was so excited to have a family, to have kids in his life, to mark their milestones. And when he moved down here, he would call all the time to say, hey, this kid did this, or this kid's doing that, and it's not bad stuff. He didn't really complain. He never called and complained. There was always something good that one of them did or was doing. He was so positive. And then he'd be like, well, yeah, we had to do something else, and I need a little legal advice on something. But that was like the end of it. It was never the lead. Again, when I met him, he was living in a small place up there. I remember helping to cater the wedding. It was very exciting. And I think I'd like to close with just a quote from one of his favorite authors. It's E. Palazzo. And it's, we tell the tales of heroes to remind ourselves that we also can be great. And so as we leave, and maybe not today or tomorrow, but you're going to be telling somebody your story of Earl. And when you do, you're keeping him alive. And that's what makes him great. And that's what makes him our hero.
And special time now as Allison's sister and his daughters come up to share. So if you will, say a prayer for them, just for the strength and be able to. But I just think it's tremendous. But thank you very much. And Kevin, I want to get those jokes. Okay.
I wore this color today for Duke because Earl was a huge Duke fan, and my boyfriend had converted me into a Tar Heels fan, but I think I'm a Duke fan again. But I know Earl wouldn't want me to be here dressed in all black today. He would want me to be how I normally am every day. And he was really into superheroes and comics, and I remember getting him this Father's Day card, and it had Superman on the front. And somewhere inside it said that he was a super dad, and I never ended up giving it to him, but I have it at my house, and I wish I had given it to him. I wish that I had told him more how much I appreciated him and loved him. He was the best dad I ever had, and the man that I needed in my life growing up. So I'm very thankful for him and the time that I had.
Okay. I wrote a little something, a poem, because I don't know if you guys know, but Earl used to like poetry, and he used to show me all his books. that he would write. And I don't know, we definitely connected through poetry a lot, but I wrote a little something. It says, Earl, a beautiful man, a kind soul, and it's too soon to let you go. Remembered by those who love you most, and we will cherish every moment that we shared together, and because we have each other. I want you to look out for Mom and make sure that we all make good choices. Oh my God. Oh, I forgot about that. Thank you for showing me what it was like to be loved unconditionally. Thank you for giving me reasons to smile. And thank you for loving us. And thank you for loving Mom. And thank you for showing her everything that she deserved in life. And thank you for being our dad. And we love you so much.
For those of you that don't know, my mom and Earl would drop us off places, and Earl would yell out the window, "Make good choices," and embarrass the crap out of us in front of everyone in school. Definitely.
At softball, at the movie theaters, anywhere. Okay. Earl was all of our rocks. I kind of wrote something, but I don't remember everything, so I'm going to try to be all over the place. I had the worst day of my life a couple days ago. The last time I cuddled up with my dad. Now I can't see. And my mind is blank, so I need... His hugs give me so much comfort and okayness and warmth, and I know that's a feeling that a lot of you can relate to. Earl was my go-to for everything. All my questions about life, the advice I needed before I went to college, and the support I needed when I couldn't handle it. With one phone call, he drove an hour and a half to move me out and bring me home. He understood me in ways no one else will ever be able to. Earl, I cried with you after your heart attack in January and told you that you couldn't leave me because I wouldn't know what I'd do without you. I need so badly to talk to you and be with you right now. I need you to be here with me and guide me through this process of grieving and then through the process of the rest of my life. Be there with me when I'm hurting. Call me when I'm angry because he knew how to do that for all of us. Be there with me through my highs when I get married or when I have kids. And all the other lows that life has to throw at me. I've always counted on you, and I know I still can. And I'm gonna bug you every day, still, with my stupid questions and all my did you knows. I know, and like every day I'd be like, did you know, Earl? And he would know already. He would know what I was talking about. Like I couldn't come out with him with any news story, anything. Like he already knew. I knew I made you proud, and you told me that I made you proud. And I hope I make you proud every day. And Earl, thank you for the life we shared. I will forever be grateful for every second I had with you. And I love you so much. And that was it.
I talked to Earl a couple of days ago, before all this happened. I live in Mass, so, like, I'm going through my own stuff up there, but he did tell me that, like, he was worried that I should move back down to Georgia, and like, because he's worried about me being alone, not having anyone. And now, like, we're all alone. Like, a part of all of us is missing. Like, I can say so many good things about Earl. Like Kevin said, I remember going to an event in Connecticut, staying up. It was funny. Earl thought I was stupid, but I was like so little.
Make good choices.
Riding in the front seat, and it was pouring rain, and I just stuck my hand out for like an hour for the whole ride, just letting the rain prick my hands till I went numb. Like I didn't even care. But that was like really fun. And like, not if anybody plays Magic in here, any card games, Earl was like one of the best nerds, superheroes, whatever you want to call it. Earl knew it all. Like they said, every time you needed to call Earl or ask questions, he was always there for you. I was used to call him all the time, more than I call any of them or my mom. I don't know if my mom, he told her, but it's true. Earl would always be at work or whatever. He would answer the phone, and I'd always call him on lunch. And like, this one thing that keeps replaying in my head is that he's like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna go in the elevator, so I'm gonna lose you. So, like, this is just like, whatever you believe in, he took the elevator somewhere. I don't know, I wanted to tell Hot Red Granny this, but I can now. That Corvette that she had, not a lot of you know, that's why we call her that. Because Earl took me on a ride, and when she had that Corvette, it was really nice. I don't remember what year, but it was really nice. All this is hard for all of us, and I know. And like, I just have to be there for them because they don't have that man anymore. And that's like what I pray and hope everybody prays for me, that I can be there for them more. Because Earl can't do that. Because he was there for me. So now I need to be there for them.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm Allison's sister. Thank you. I'm Allison's sister, and I'm not going to speak about memories about Earl, because I can't. I just want to step up here and tell you guys thank you for all the love and support and the little things and the big things that you've done for my family here today. When I'm not here and when I have to leave, I feel safe, and I have comfort in my heart knowing that all of you will look after them. I think I'm done. The kids could actually do better than me. But thank you.
Allison had picked the songs today, so at this time we're going to have one that Earl said, every time I go to church with you, I hear this song. What's it mean? And Allison got to explain to him, oh, you know, the one about the 99, the shepherd that leaves the 100 to go after the one, leaves the 99 behind to go after the one. And so if you will, just enjoy a song that began to mean something to Earl and thus mean something to the family.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love. chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. When I was your fault, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no words, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
To share my appreciation for, again, the guys and the family. And that's huge, you guys as family coming up and sharing. And if there's one thing for my life at this point in time, outside of having met Earl through Allison and her sharing about him, coolest nerd that ever existed, and totally rocked her socks off, I guess you could say. And I was like almost felt like time warp when she was telling about how they met. And it was AOL, you know, the old "you got mail" deal. And she had no idea what she was getting in the mail. But after talking and back and forth and one thing and another like that, and before they had as many groups out there you could jump on to meet somebody, and she didn't even know if she was really looking for anybody or not. But Earl stepped into the picture. So she decided it was worth the risk after at least what she heard back and forth and between talking and the emails and stuff, that time to meet up. And so she was so brave that she made sure that her brother was working at Applebee's that night and that he would be there to rescue her if she needed rescued. And of all things, here comes through the door the Earl. And the Earl had his preppy sweater over his shoulders and tied, and I got that certain picture too. I was like, oh, I know those guys. And she goes, man, this doesn't fit my family background at all. You know, what have I got myself into? And the whole unique thing about it all was she had no concept of what she'd gotten herself into. In a lot of ways, it, so to speak, comes into today, because I am not going to argue with anybody about what the worst day of your life is. I wish I could tell you today there will only be one of them, but there won't be. What I can tell you is that I believe, and I believe that just like the song that was just sung, that God does have this reckless kind of love. It's not a love like we'd like to think, and I'd always wanted to. I didn't grow up wanting to be a preacher. The irony, I wanted to be a lawyer. But really, isn't that bizarre? And I'm still not sure which would have been better, but I know I'm better off because of it. But as I look at life and look at God, I always wanted to make God have the white hat. I always wanted to be able to explain how I could understand what he was doing, and I can't. I can only understand and look at other things and say, but I look at that, and somebody was doing something. And so through that AOL account, nobody could have imagined, after Allison had been through what she'd been through, and the kids were young enough to not really know what all was taking place, somebody was working. That's where I kind of lean towards. I like to believe it was God. It's hard to believe that a guy that had never been married would, it's one thing to be attracted to a woman, but I've heard plenty of stories about guys that when they found out there were kids involved, that, whoa, they found their exit and got out of Dodge, and that was it. Not Earl, man. He stepped up. And both out of a love of a lady, but then as he meets the family, a love for them too. And everything that I've heard and been able to see, it was as if he'd been in their life all along. That doesn't just happen. That's not just about coincidence, is it? And that's what we've got to decide is there a force behind things? Are there truly two forces? I mean, this guy's a comic book hero kind of a guy. I mean, there's always the villain and there's always the good guy, right? And the truth, American justice, and all that good stuff, And I'm not trying to pretend and limit God to that, but I tell you what, we're stupid if we want to believe there's no devil. Because there's something at work here. There's something about this that's just not good and not right, it seems. As there are in other things, the things that happened before Earl ever existed. But there's at the same time, there's this other force that continues to work in a way too, that he's trying to bring about things. And it's just so cool when you stop and you look back at the bigger pictures and the ripple effect. The things that we're ready to give up and quit if we can hold on. And you can either hold on to yourself, to luck, or you can choose to hold on to God. I, again, feel, whoa, like, man, I blew it. I'm just not one to crowd people, and there just never was that moment to sit down and say, hey, Earl, I'm Steve, what's going on? And the last thing I try to do with people that come to church is to crowd them, because I feel, first of all, it's not about me, and second of all, it's not about anything other than giving them space to understand. I mean, we've said from the get-go here, we won't ask anybody to stand up, to speak up, to sign up, or to buck up. You come in the doors, you're just accepted. And that's what I wanted Earl to feel. But it's so neat to hear the ripple effect that in his life, this song that intrigued him about this leaving 99 good sheep behind to go after the wandering one, you know? And then to hear, as Scott shared, I believe it was Scott, is that correct? But to hear share about their conferences and their different times and their talking and sharing and giving Earl that chance in his inquiry to reconnect. Because, man, there's one thing to know about God when you're a child, and there's another thing that to begin to see life unfold, and all depending on whether you understand God according to the way God presents himself, or we do it because we want him to be the good guy that always rescues the damsel in distress and everything else. But, man, I can't begin to try to figure out God. I just have figured out one thing. I don't want to do life without him, and I don't want to die without him. And I believe that he's loved me when I don't deserve to be loved, and I still need a Savior more than I ever did. And it's in that regard that I look at God in the way that he continually tries to step into our lives, say, here I am, but he too will not force himself upon you. He waits for you to invite in. Preachers, man, I mean, I'll tell you what, it's one of the reasons I didn't want to be one. They're too quick to sometimes talk you into, twist your arm, and no, man, it's got to be in your timing. But the last thing I ever want to be is somebody that keeps somebody from seeing God. You see, one of the passages that, man, if I'm frustrated with God, it is I didn't get to know Earl, because I would have, our humor is, just on top of each other. I know Julie's back there rolling her eyes because the jokes that I tell, and the church people are here know them too, and they quit laughing at the jokes, they just laugh at me, but that's okay, man. I just love to laugh. I think it's a blast, and I'll share with you a passage that helped put kind of my bolted me down and squared some things up for me, because it's just hard to figure out life at times. And Paul does a pretty succinct job of doing it, far better than I could. The amazing thing is, he was this Christian, but Ben, way before that, he was a lawyer, but it was a religious lawyer. And although Earl went to Torah, Paul was steeped in the Torah and knew all about it. And so when Jesus came along, Paul didn't have any room for him and was going to kill anybody that did. And yet he got turned around, and that's what I like about Paul. He was a skeptic that became fully convinced it was about Jesus. And he was in Athens, Greece, and back in the days when the big philosophers are still read today, and Earl probably has some of those books. I mean, at least according to Allison, that he was kind of nerdy that way too. I mean, he'd read classic old books, and one thing, and I like that who the world of us that just like to just go through life, too busy to read stuff like that, right? But not Earl, man. He would look, and these classic guys were alive back then, and they're up there on the Areopagus above Athens and on Mars Hill, and where all those Greek statues are and all the different gods are noticed. And Paul was invited to speak to them, and this is what he said. He said, Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus, and he said, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you're very religious. As I walked around, I looked carefully at your objects of worship. I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.'" In other words, the Greeks kind of had this, let's cover all the bases, and in case we've missed one, we don't want to make him mad, so let's just put up a bust, and if we find out about him, we'll come up with a way or something that he looks like. And Paul said, man, let me tell you about that. He said, what you worship is unknown. I'm going to proclaim to you that the God that made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth. And then he said, but this God doesn't live in temples built by hands, as if he needed anything, because he himself gives all men their life, their breath, and everything else. And this is when I routinely will ask people, and not because it's just part of my deal, it's that isn't life an amazing thing? And I mean, I know that this family has had to go through sleepless nights lately, and I pray for you to have great rest, that restoring kind. But I struggle with insomnia myself, and it's just frustrating and all, but at the same time, when I can sleep, it's great. And, but man, I've never gone to bed saying, okay, brain, keep working, because if you don't, I'm not going to make it through the night. Lungs, keep breathing. Heart, you better keep beating, right? I mean, it's kind of a strange thing, because in all ways, you're asleep. You're not controlling anything. What keeps it going? Paul said, well, he said, I'll call it God. He gives us our life. our breath, and everything else. From one man he made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth. And this is where it gets intriguing and interesting to me. And this is where if I'd have been through, I would have loved to have heard his thoughts. I'm not talking about me talking him into anything. I just would have liked to see him explore and explode this thought. He determined, it says, from one man he made every nation of men, and he determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. Again, you can go coincidence, or you can go God incidence or providence or whatever. But I mean, I look at this and I go, wow, that's bizarre. Almost as bizarre as me, a dirt kid, farm kid from Illinois, living in Atlanta, Georgia for the past 20 years. I did get to meet Earl, I just didn't get to know him. I have met and gotten to know Allison more. But what are the odds of that? Well, if there's 8 billion people in the world, I'd probably say there's 1 in 8 billion. What do you think? Us today, and those of you that have worked with him in different places, childhood friends, man, the Southeast, up the coast, Massachusetts of all things. I mean, I just can't imagine Allison in Massachusetts till I hear her sister talk, and I'm like, whoa. They don't call you a Yankee, do they? No, up there, down here they would. But man, I mean, it's like, what are the odds of them crossing paths? What are the odds of those two people meeting, or us meeting today, or like all these friends and these different things, and then the guy that's telling about all of his friends that they used to go to the game deal and how they would remember Earl. I mean, what was there about Earl that just the people that met him didn't forget him and enjoyed being with him? His sweater? I think it was a lot more than that. I think it was his heart that he couldn't hide. I think it was because, one, the thing that's missing big time in this world today is just being real, being genuine. What you see is what you get. And not in some sarcastic way, but it's just, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to be plastic. And so I want you to think about this thing of God determining the times and places. I mean, what were the odds of Allison and Earl crossing paths? And then what were the odds that as crossing that path that it would be a love connection, but not just a love connection like syrupy TV, but rather instead a true deep level love connection that included family, that would transport them from what they knew and where they had other family to Georgia. And then in the midst of that, the kids growing up and his total support, not only through school, but with all the sports and the going 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 and the going. And I mean, it's as if there was no limit to what he would do to make sure that they knew, I'm with you, I'm behind you, cheering you on. I mean, so this, was that just an accident? Was that just a freak of nature, or did God know what he was doing? I wonder how different, since the year 2000 and 2007, especially the year that everything really got knotted together, but the last 12 years, was it just coincidence? Or did God have a little bit about what he was doing? And for the rest of you that met him, for a mom that gave him birth, for a sister that grew up with him. Man, I just think it's so intriguing when you think about it. And I just am one of these that I'd rather believe there's a plan than something accidentally happened. And I'll tell you one thing, Earl wasn't an accident. He was an on-purpose kind of guy. Anyway, when I see this and I read this, it's the next part then that begins to bring it together, because you got this, for those that want to be a little nerdy, you got this XY axis. You've got time, and you've got places, and then you've got other people's times and places and how they intersect. And I mean, it boggles if you're that way in your mind, but at the same time, it's just so intriguing to think about the fact that times means not only the day you'll be born, but it even means the day that you'll die. There are other places, God said, all the days were ordained for every single one of us before one of them came to be. I would be the first in line to say, I don't deserve to be alive. I'd rather Earl be alive. Julie would be glad to be free of me, and, you kids still need him. That's not the way that God doled it out. I can't explain that. I can't even begin to go fair. I mean, it's just, but as I look at this thing, then I've got to ask, so why, God? What's going on? And with each of us, we know when we were born, but we aren't certain of when we're going to die, are we? And it really can be at any time because none of us were given this certificate that says you're good for this many years. And so I think that that's what's great about funerals, even though I don't like them. And the great thing about funerals is, man, we do understand life a lot better when we're staring death in the face, you know? I don't know what went on in Earl's mind with the heart attack and all, but I know I've talked with other people who have gone through that, and they go, whoa, who am I, where am I, what's going on? And I think it's healthy for us to stop today and to go, whoa, not only has this important life passed, but what happens when mine does? Paul went on to finish out by telling them, he said, God did this. He created man, determined times, exact places, kept them alive to accomplish their purpose, and he did this so that men would seek him, perhaps reach out for him and find him, even though he's not far from any one of us. The funny thing is, the song that Earl liked about the shepherd that left the 99 to go after the one, in many regards was used by the shepherd to go after more than one. Because I've heard people today say enough that I'm convinced that many of you saw attributes of God in Earl. I'm not saying he was a God. I'm just saying he was a man that lived on purpose, didn't try to impress people. I mean, isn't that the other funny thing at funerals? We don't wonder about status. There's not anything that anybody could do, go buy a new car that would make today better. And suddenly it's because in life we begin to understand it is about living and it's about people. It's about other people's lives. And I just like to think about it, and today as, you know, we wrap things up here, and what do you do next? I mean, I can't tell you. I'll tell you on one hand that I don't understand grief even though I know it and have experienced it and see it in others, but it's this random thing that there is no timetable, there is no just do this, you know. The only thing I can encourage you with is don't get caught up in all the questions, but because you had somebody here that you knew and you know what you had. So instead of letting your mind get terrorized by all the questions, go back and just say, stop. I don't know everything, but I know this. And I want to promise you as you go through grief, holding on to what you know about Earl and his love for you and his purpose and consistency will do more for you than anything else can do, because all the questions in the world that can't be answered, but you can know what you know. It's like being at the beach and you wade out into the waters of the ocean and you're going out this way and you turn back to look at the beach and you're thinking, man, this is beautiful. I can't believe I'm here. And the salt water's going back and forth, the waves just in and out. And all of a sudden, when you're not paying attention, what happens? That big wave comes in. It's like, wow. And it just smacks you back down into the sand and you're swirling in the salt water. It's in your eyes and your nose and everything else. And you're like, what happened? That's the way grief is. Your day's going fine. You think you've about got to pace back to it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there'll be that wave that will hit you. What do? You wipe your eyes and you let the tears flow to cleanse them, and you blow out your nose and you go, wow. And I want to encourage you to say, thank you, God, that I knew Earl. I would rather know Earl and miss him like crazy than I would never to have known him, even though never knowing him would make this a lot easier, right? And so it's in that regard. And the other part of it is picking up and saying, man, but if God took the time to put Earl in my life, and it wasn't for as long as I'd like, but during the time that he did, was there any part about Earl that pointed me towards God? Any attribute that he had that makes me say, man, maybe I need to check out what Earl believed? But the other thing is of just the genuine characteristics he had. Man, the way to keep him alive is saying, I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband. Crying out loud, man, when Allison told me they'd only fought once, I'm like, are you kidding me? Was this real? One fight? Come on. Everybody fights more than that. She wasn't lying. It was true. Why? Because they just loved each other enough. What was worth fighting over? So I encourage you to pick out one of his attributes. He's a great father. I know I've seen the thing before, the tattoos with love, laugh, and live, and whatever, you know. And he did it all. But man, was his depth of love strong, as I heard from friends for over the years, from family, from kids, from his wife. And man, I just tell you, look at that and say, God, help me to be more like that. Because one of the things that I really looked at that I like, that I want to do, I was so amazed with how consistent he was. That's what's worthwhile, taking time of our life and of our Sunday afternoon and saying, what would it take for me to be more consistent like Earl? Because that's the kind of stuff that builds respect as well as leaves a legend, right? It's consistency, genuineness, being real. And as the brother said today, or maybe I guess it was really truly, I'm sorry, it's Allison's sister that said, I trust as I go back that there are people here to surround my sister and her family. We don't want to overwhelm you. We don't want you to be alone. And so help us, coach us, so that we can be that to you, I pray. So as you pick up with your life, man, the other thing is, I got to tell you, man, I'm like Scott. I'm like, wow, I believe there's something after this. And according to what the Bible says, it's something that's greater than this. And it's not being fat, chubby cherubs strumming harps on clouds. It's being alive with a body that is unbelievable, that will never hurt again. And that sounds good. I don't care how old you are, right? But it's all about Jesus. And it's believing that he didn't come to punish us. He came because we lived in a way that we were punished. And he came to say, I've got something more for you. It's not about just life here, but it's hereafter. And so he told his disciples that night when he said, man, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust in me. And I am the way, the truth, and the life. I wouldn't tell you if I couldn't take you there. Father and God, today I just ask that with this family that absolutely they could sense your presence. I can't begin to know or tell them what they'll experience, Lord, or the rest that are here today. But I thank you for these that have come out that stood up for a man that was a stand-up kind of a guy. And God, for just showing, if nothing else, the boldness and the courage to be here to say to them, I care. But God, we really are out of words to know what we need to say. And I know the thing that more people than not will say today is, let me know if there's something I can do. And God, I just pray that this family would know that we mean that, because we don't know what to do. But Lord, help us at the same time, if you want to coach us, to direct us so we can help out as well. Thank you for, Lord, the hands that provided and prepared this food, that this family could eat a meal with their friends that are like family. And God, I pray everybody would just stay and just take time to appreciate their life as they appreciate the lives around them. And God, I pray that in these closing moments as well, that this family would just feel a sunbeam or something, Lord, of you and Earl, and just that they would be, Lord, touched in their heart and warmth that, like was said, it's just in the elevator, you know. There'll be another time to talk. And God, I just thank you that we could meet and that they would share. And God, for a life like Earl's, and the rest of us spend our days invested as well as he invested his. In Jesus' name, amen. So at this time, we're going to have a song. It's a special song, and I'm so clueless at times, I didn't realize it was supposed to be a secret song. But it's a song that I've never heard, so I'm anxious to hear. But it's going to mean a great deal to certain parts of the family, and it meant a lot to Earl. And for those of you that aren't immediate family, during this song, then, if you would, we'd like you to get up and go out the doors and to your left and down the stairs. Begin to eat, and the family, after have their closing moments with Earl, they'll come down and join you as soon as possible, okay? So, Cale, if you will, play the song, and thank you very much.
And I feel the time's a ways to go. So where you going to tomorrow? And I see that these are lies to come. Would you even care? And I feel it mask I found. And I feel when the dogs begin to smell her. Well, she smell alone. And I feel so much depends on the weather. So is it raining in your bedroom? And I see these are the eyes of disarray. Would you even care? And I feel it, and she feels it. Where you going to tomorrow? Where you going with a mask I found? And I feel when the dogs begin to smell her. Well, she smell alone. When the dogs you find her, got time to wait for tomorrow. To find it. When the dogs you find her, got time to wait for tomorrow. To find it.